What if I told you that a former president of the United States appeared in the flight logs of a convicted sex offender? Not once, not twice, but on multiple trips spanning several years. What if I told you that one of those trips was a week-long journey across Africa on a plane the tabloids nicknamed the Lolita Express? And if I told you that the documents proving all of this have been public record for years? Yet somehow, the full story has never been told in sequence, with every name, every date, every stop laid bare. I'm Mark Epstein, and this is the Epstein Files. Today we open File 32. And in this file, we examine one of the most politically sensitive threads in the entire Epstein investigation: the documented air travel relationship between Jeffrey Edward Epstein and William Jefferson Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States. Let me be absolutely clear from the outset. This episode is built entirely on publicly available documents, specifically flight logs subpoenaed from Jeffrey Epstein's pilots and entered into court records referenced in civil litigation, and public statements made by President Clinton's own representatives. We are not here to speculate. We are here to read the paper trail. The core documents we are working from today are the pilot flight logs maintained by Larry Visosky and David Rogers, Epstein's two primary pilots, which were subpoenaed during litigation and entered into the public record through multiple proceedings, including the civil case Virginia Giuffre versus Ghislaine Maxwell, case number 15 CV 07433. Additional flight log references surfaced through investigative reporting, most notably by the Miami Herald in its Perversion of Justice series authored by Julie K. Brown. The relationship between Clinton and Epstein appears to have begun in the late 1990s, after Clinton left office in January 2001. According to multiple accounts, they were introduced through mutual connections in the world of philanthropy and high finance. But it is the period between 2002 and 2003 that the flight logs document most heavily. But here's where it gets disturbing. Let's start with what the flight logs actually show. The pilot logs maintained by David Rogers, Epstein's longtime personal pilot, document passengers aboard Epstein's Boeing 727, tail number N908JE, and later his Gulfstream and other aircraft. These logs were handwritten by the pilots and include dates, departure points, destinations, and passenger names. According to these logs, former President Bill Clinton appears as a passenger on multiple flights during the 2002 to 2003 period. Now, the exact total number of flights versus the number of trips has been a subject of public confusion, and I want to address that directly. A single multi-stop trip, say from New York to Newfoundland to the Azores to Africa, could involve multiple flight log entries because each leg of the journey is logged separately. So when various media reports have cited numbers ranging from 4 to 26, part of that discrepancy comes from whether you are counting individual flight segments or round-trip journeys. What is documented and not in serious dispute is this: Clinton took several trips on Epstein's aircraft. His representatives, specifically Angel Urena, Clinton's press secretary, issued a statement in 2019 acknowledging 4 trips, and that Secret Service detail accompanied him on every flight. However, the flight logs themselves tell a more detailed story. The logs show Clinton's name appearing on substantially more individual flight segments than the 4 trips described by his spokesperson. Investigative journalist Julie K. Brown, in her reporting for the Miami Herald, and later in her book, Perversion of Justice, published in 2021, documented Clinton's name appearing on flight log entries across multiple multi-leg journeys. The most extensively documented journey is the Africa trip. Let's go there now. In late September 2002, according to the flight logs, Bill Clinton boarded Epstein's Boeing 727 for a multi-country trip across Africa. The stated purpose, according to Clinton's representatives, was related to Clinton Foundation humanitarian work. specifically HIV, AIDS relief, and poverty alleviation initiatives. The flight logs for this trip document stops including destinations in Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda, Mozambique, and South Africa. The passenger manifests on these flights included, at various points, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and according to the logs, other individuals including actress and comedian Kevin Spacey and actor Chris Tucker. Now, let me be precise here. The inclusion of Epstein and Maxwell on a philanthropic trip is, in itself, not evidence of wrongdoing. Epstein at this point in 2002 had not yet been charged with any crime. He was known as a wealthy financier and philanthropist. Ghislaine Maxwell was known as a British socialite. The criminal investigation in Palm Beach would not begin until 2005. But what these logs establish, as a matter of documented record, is the depth and duration of the relationship. This was not a single chance encounter at a fundraiser. This was a former president of the United States, repeatedly traveling on the private aircraft of a man who would later be revealed as a prolific sex trafficker. And the Africa trip was not the only journey. The flight logs also document trips within the United States and to other international destinations. Clinton's name appears on flights connected with trips to Asia as well during this same approximate time period. Again, Clinton's representatives have characterized all travel as related to the Clinton Foundation's charitable mission. Now, if you're still here, it means you can handle the truth. So let me show you what they didn't want you to see. Let's talk about what else was happening during this 2002 to 2005 window. Because context is everything in an investigation. While Bill Clinton was appearing in these flight logs, Jeffrey Epstein's operation in Palm Beach, Florida, was active. According to the investigation that would later be opened by the Palm Beach Police Department in March 2005, victims described a pattern of abuse that had been ongoing for years at Epstein's residence at 358 El Brillo Way, Palm Beach, Florida. Source: Palm Beach Police Department investigation, case number 05368. Pacer, case 0880736, CIV, SD FLA. I want to be very clear. There is no court document, no deposition, no testimony in any proceeding that places Bill Clinton at 358 El Brillo Way or that accuses Clinton of any criminal conduct in connection with Epstein's crimes. That must be stated plainly, and this series will not imply otherwise. What the documents do raise, and what investigators and journalists have examined, are questions about knowledge and association. Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent accuser in the Epstein case, who filed the civil suit against Ghislaine Maxwell, case number 15T-CV07433 in the Southern District of New York, mentioned Clinton in a deposition in that case. In her testimony, Giuffre stated that she recalled seeing Clinton on Epstein's private island, Little St. James, in the United States Virgin Islands. Source: Pacer, case 15CV07433, Giuffre deposition. However, and this is critical, Giuffre also explicitly stated in the same body of proceedings that Clinton did not engage in any improper conduct in her presence. She did not accuse Clinton of sexual misconduct. Clinton's representatives have denied that he ever visited Little St. James. Source: Giuffre deposition, case 15CV07433, Clinton spokesperson statements. This discrepancy, whether Clinton visited Little St. James or not, has never been resolved by any court. There is no flight log entry that specifically shows a flight landing on Little St. James with Clinton aboard in the documents that have been made public as of this date. The logs show flights to the United States Virgin Islands region, specifically to St. Thomas, where Little St. James is accessible by boat or helicopter. But a St. Thomas landing and a visit to the island are not the same thing, and the distinction matters. Source: flight logs, document cloud, geographic records, USVI. Now, let me bring in another layer. When the Epstein case was first adjudicated in Florida, it resulted in the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement negotiated by then United States Attorney Alexander Acosta. That agreement, filed in connection with case number ASO 736 CIV in the Southern District of Florida, effectively shielded Epstein and, critically, unnamed co-conspirators from federal prosecution. Source: PACER, Case 08-80736 CV, SD Flaw, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 3. The identities of all the co-conspirators referenced in that NPA have never been fully disclosed. The agreement itself was later found to have violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act by U.S. District Judge Kenneth Mara in a ruling dated February 21, 2019. Source: PACER, Case 08-80736 CV, Judge Mara ruling, February 21, 2019. I am not suggesting that Clinton was a named or unnamed co-conspirator. There is no evidence in any court record to support that claim. But the NPA's broad protections for unnamed individuals is a documented fact that hangs over the entire Epstein case like a shadow. This is where the official story falls apart. Not around Clinton specifically, but around the system that surrounded Epstein. Consider the timeline. Epstein was socializing with world leaders, billionaires, and former presidents between 2002 and 2005. He was simultaneously, according to his later criminal indictment, case number 19 CR 490 in the Southern District of New York, operating a sex trafficking network that exploited dozens of minor girls. Source: PACER, Case 19 CR 490, SDNY, indictment filed July 2019. The grand question that this episode forces us to confront is not whether Bill Clinton committed a crime. The evidence does not support that claim. The question is far more unsettling. How did a man running a sex trafficking operation maintain such close, extended, multi-country travel relationships with one of the most powerful people on Earth, and no one noticed? No one questioned it? No one in the Secret Service, who, according to Clinton's own representatives, accompanied him on these flights, flagged anything. The Secret Service confirmed in 2019 that agents did accompany the former president on some trips, but stated that their records from that period were limited. Specific details regarding Secret Service protective activity are generally not disclosed publicly. Source: Secret Service statements reported by multiple outlets, July 2019. There are questions here that remain unanswered. And in documentary journalism, unanswered questions are not accusations. They are invitations for the truth. I'm Mark Epstein, and I'll see you in the next file. Hit subscribe and the bell icon to stay updated. This is not conspiracy. This is court record. Let's connect this to the larger arc of the series. In earlier episodes, we documented the construction of Epstein's network, how he used philanthropy, finance, and social access as the architecture of his power. The Clinton flight logs are perhaps the most vivid illustration of that architecture in action. A former president traveling on your plane for your foundation events with your name on the manifest. That is not just a friendship. That is a shield. That is social capital of the highest order. And the fact that Epstein continued operating for years after these trips, that the Palm Beach investigation did not begin until 2005, that the federal case was not brought until 2019, 17 years after that Africa trip, tells us something about how power protects power, whether anyone intends it to or not. In future episodes, we will examine how Epstein cultivated similar relationships with other powerful figures, creating a web of association so dense that investigating him meant potentially implicating the most powerful people on Earth. And we will ask whether that web was a coincidence or a strategy. So what do we know for certain from File 32? We know that Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's aircraft multiple times between 2002 and 2003. This is confirmed by flight logs in the court record and acknowledged by Clinton's own representatives. We know the Africa trip happened, a multi-country, multi-day journey with Epstein and Maxwell aboard. We know Clinton's representatives have denied any knowledge of or participation in Epstein's crimes. We know that no court filing, no indictment, no deposition accuses Clinton of criminal conduct in connection with Epstein. And we know that these flights happened during the same years, that Epstein was trafficking minors in Palm Beach, New York, and the United States Virgin Islands. The paper doesn't tell us everything, but it tells us enough to keep asking questions. The powerful bury the truth, but paper has a longer memory than power. If this episode opened your eyes, hit subscribe and the bell icon, because every file matters. Comment below. What questions do you still have about the Clinton flight logs? I read every single one. Share this before it disappears from your feed. Next file, episode 33. We open the black book, and you will not believe whose personal phone numbers Jeffrey Epstein had on speed dial. I'm Mark Epstein, and I'll see you in the next file.